I do not seek to convince anyone of anything, just to present data as objectively as I can, my conclusions, and perhaps exposing certain manufactured consent. Do the research and reach your own conclusions. Firearms bring violence. The most armed countries are violent. Where there are more guns, there is more insecurity. More guns equal more blood. Guns equal danger. Guns equal blood. Guns equal violence. It's common to find this opinion in thousands of bipeds. But what is it based on? Some quantifiable, reasoned relationship? Or maybe some groundless idea of a violent or clumsy human nature? Or perhaps it is an implanted fear, manufactured by an authoritarian big brother. A knife, a knuckle duster, an electric taser are weapons. A broomstick or a kitchen pot aren't, but may be used in the same fashion. The purpose given to the design determines whether the tool is used correctly, that is, to defend or to violate. Does owning any of these tools incite to violate, or do they promote violence by themselves? These are the 10 countries with the highest ownership of firearms in the population in 2017, according to Statista. This is the data for 2022 from World Population Review. The United States ranking far as the most armed nation per capita, doubling the next one in the list. It is both the most influential country and the one that provides the most statistics to analyze the subject. The mass media tends to portray the United States, both locally and internationally, as a violent place where many urban mass shootings take place, and that this is due to gun ownership or to insufficient laws. In this country, there are some studies of those who are for and against gun laws, presenting death rates versus gun ownership. We'll go through a brief review of some numbers. The 3 states with the highest percentage of gun ownership per household in 2022, data from World Population Review, are Montana, 66.3%, Wyoming, 66.2%, Alaska, 64.5%. The 3 states with the fewest guns are Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. To have a point of comparison, these are the 3 most populated states: California, Texas, and Florida. These percentages have not changed significantly in recent years. Finally, these are the total numbers for the country, with 44% of households owning weapons, or 32% of individuals or the population. These are the American Progress statistics from 2008 to 2017, a 10-year period. The source of the data is the CDC. Because of the final year of this metric, it is compared with the population of 2017. These are gun deaths and deaths per 100,000 inhabitants over 10 years. In the case of Montana, 1,810 deaths and 172 deaths per 100,000 inhabitants. This is data typically presented as chilling from a violent nation. But we cannot leave aside a very relevant statistic, that of suicides by firearm and suicides per 100,000 inhabitants. At least 60% of firearm deaths are suicides. The firearm is efficient and quick for a decision that is made in the heat of the moment. Other methods to end one's life tend to require planning. They can fail and lead some to reconsider. For this reason, these numbers are high. Suicide is not violence, regardless of what any biped would like to believe. There must be at least 2 individuals in order for violence to exist. If we subtract suicides from deaths, we get much less shocking numbers. This result is closer to a metric of violence, although it also includes accidental deaths that are not few and should not be classified as violence. This would be the average of the 3 most armed states, the 3 least armed, and the 3 most populated. The average of the most armed states is below the most populated and the country average. I don't deny that there are places with concerning statistics like Alaska, and that this extract of analysis is very poor. It does not consider many factors. Some of the states like Wyoming, Alaska, and Rhode Island have a low population, and their numbers may distort the result. If we review the CDC's homicide data from recent years, this is murders with different means, not just firearms. We will find that the states with the most firearms, previously mentioned, which tend to be located northwest, have a very low rate. But states in the central southeast have a high rate, and states like Alabama and Mississippi are heavily armed. Although homicide does not consider other transgressions such as robbery and rape, it is a measure of violence with a certain level of precision. Other cases of violence tend to follow a similar curve. If we create a spreadsheet with the homicide data of the 50 states taken from 2019, since recent years have been abnormal, and place them in descending order according to the rate, we obtain this curve. If we add the percentages of gun ownership from World Population Review, keeping the descending order of homicides, we will obtain this graph. If we overlay the graphics, we will find that there is no evident relation between higher gun ownership and homicides. The data does not follow the curve. Now, let's make the same comparison with another much more comprehensive metric of violence, official FBI data of violent crimes for the year 2019. This includes murder, rape, robbery, and armed aggravated assault with and without injuries. We will find again that the graph of gun ownership by state does not follow the pattern of crimes. This may be evidence that several geopolitical, social, labor, legal, and migration factors are a much more incidental background in violence with guns than their ownership. I do not seek to show biased statistics to defend firearm ownership, because regardless of the numbers, it is a freedom, a right, that a free society should grant, if it's really free. Just as we have the freedom and the right to wear clothing. It is man's law that interferes, dictating the restriction and overshadowing the moral aspect. If we analyze the numbers on gun ownership as an indicator of alleged violence, and we zoom out to global data, we would expect that countries where ownership is much higher would have more homicides, but this is not the case. According to World Population Review, these are the 10 countries with the highest homicide rates per 100,000 inhabitants in 2019. This does not include war deaths. The most armed nation and the 10 most armed countries do not appear in the ranking. The United States would figure if it were a top 20. The places with the highest incidence of rape and robbery also do not include the most armed countries, possibly indicating that there are much more influential subjects than the ownership of weapons, and that prohibition has little effect on the numbers. Cartels and unlawful narcotics affect this metric. Antisocials will always have weapons, regardless of what man's law says. This is a 2019 NPR comparison of the United States homicides with the countries with the most homicides. This is a comparison with African countries under the Sahara Desert. Certain similarity between the social, political, and economical conditions of Latin America and Africa could evidence that certain factors are much more influential in gun violence. Several geopolitical and social factors are influential in gun violence. Correlation does not imply causation. Guns don't generate violence. In my opinion, a more accurate approach, judging by the places with the most homicides, it is social injustice poverty, corruption, exploitation, lack of education, which generate violence. And to be more accurate, social injustice doesn't generate violence. It is violence. The media could present data adding up suicides, accidents, and shootings of disturbed bipeds, portraying them as concerning statistics. And they don't need to lie, just to show biased information following an agenda. And persistent repetition is effective, influencing the biped's subconscious. For example, from this total of global homicides in 2019, from health data, the media could say that a quarter of all murders in the world take place in Brazil, and that 8% of all murders in the world take place in the United States. It is true data, but does not consider the immense population that exists in these countries. That is to say, it is not a per capita analysis, sounding in this way much more alarming. In my opinion, upbringing, ethical and libertarian education, principles and values are our most important right and weapon with a transcendent potential to bring freedom and peace. And this education comprehends our sovereignty and responsibility, which are and have been violated. It is not alien to the concept of the sacred masculine, to self-defense. Our divine right to defend ourselves is and has been removed by allowing governments to disarm us, which I believe is part of the authoritarian agenda.